Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending where are you in this moment. Thank you very much for joining today for this follow-up webinar. It is a pleasure to welcome colleagues from across different disciplines, institutions, and countries, and we sincerely appreciate your continued engagement and commitment throughout this process. This webinar is part of our ongoing effort to advance the Antarctica InSync initiative and to ensure a transparent, inclusive, and community-driven process. Today's session builds directly on the work we have been developing together over the past years. This webinar builds on the discussions held during the previous session and provides an opportunity to reflect on the progress made since then. Today, we aim to present updates on the white papers, highlight key developments, and offer a space for further exchange that will help strengthen their context and relevance. Your contributions and feedbacks are essential to this process. This follow-up webinar allows us to bring together perspective from the wider scientific community and to ensure that the white papers benefit from broad and interdisciplinary and international input. Now I will present the agenda. At first, each team will briefly present the core messages of its white paper, focusing on the key scientific challenges, main knowledge gaps, and proposed actions. These are plenary presentations and are intentionally concise to allow sufficient time for discussion. Second, following each presentation, we will move into theme-specific breakout discussions. These sessions are a critical part of the process. They are meant to be interactive and forward-looking, providing space to clarify ideas, identify priorities, and discuss how the wider community can contribute. Third, and this is particularly important, we want to encourage all participants to actively provide written feedback directly through the SCAR white papers commenting platform. So we know that the verbal discussion is extremely valuable, but written comments ensure that your input is formally. Before we begin, I would like to inform you that the plenary presentations will be recorded, but unfortunately not the breakout discussions groups. These recordings will support documentation and follow up the process. We hope that today's presentations and discussions will be engaging and productive, and that they will help guide the next step of the white paper process. Thank you to all of you again for your time and active participation. And with that, I will now like to hand over to Stephanie Ahn and Alexander Haumann, who will provide a brief introductory overview before we continue with the program.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Diego. Good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are. Or also from my side, and not also from my side, but on behalf of the whole coordination group around Antarctica InSync, as well as Alex, who will take over that presentation at some point from my end. We want to take the opportunity here today to not go again back to give the whole overview and introduction to Antarctica InSync, as we assume that many or all of you know the general background. However, we just want to take the opportunity to go briefly through the history of how Antarctica InSync developed until that stage, in particular with the view towards the white paper procedure. So therefore, we start this rollback in 2023, even though a lot of stuff has happened already before 2023, given that we had before initiatives who came up with, for example, the Southern Ocean Action Plan and many other documents that you can see here on the left, as also the SCAR Horizon Scan for the Antarctic and Southern Ocean Science and so on. And all of these papers kind of like came to the conclusion that it's like essential to coordinate ourselves better with respect to Antarctic research, and to coordinate ourselves better in a way of like synchronous observations, and to really bundle expertise both in the observational part, but also in the modeling and satellite remote sensing perspective. Having this said, it was then the ATCM meeting in 2023 where the first time Antarctica InSync was presented on a higher international and political level, and where we agreed kind of like to kick that off. And then the whole Antarctica InSync program got established as a program of the UN Ocean Decade, where then also in the same year, the SUS Symposium took place in Hobart in Tasmania, where we then managed the first time also to start serious discussions within the science community to think about what are our aims of Antarctica InSync, also thought not only like top-down approach, but in particular the bottom-up approach in order to see what are really the needs and wishes from the community. In 2024, the next ATCM meeting took place, and this is then where even more countries joined Antarctica InSync, and the whole thing got like really quite some momentum. Also during the EU Polar Science Week, with the huge support of ESA, as they are also the ones today hosting and supporting us in this series of webinars. In addition, there have been then also the SCAR Symposium, where the initiation of the alignment with the SCAR strategy started, and we're also there again, both on the science, but also on the political level, quite some momentum was established through Antarctica InSync and the whole community. And this was then also the year where we finally managed to kind of like get people together, to commit people on national levels and to build our national committees, where quite some of you here also in the room are active, where we are really happy about that, that the community is happy and like willing to engage on a national level in order to bring together the different science themes. Talking about the science themes, this was also 2024 where we finally established those, and therefore just like to remind you, those are the 7 themes that we have as of today. For some of you, it might be new that we have now 7. So we started initially with the 6 themes. I don't want to go into much detail. However, we are really glad that then in 2025, actually, the 7th theme on the variability extremes and tipping points in the changing Antarctic climate got also to the stage in order to allow now also to connect all these different themes on a kind of like even longer time scale and really overarching throughout all these themes. Having this said, these science themes are then kind of like being further developed, and this is why I want to briefly just like present here again the whole structure of Antarctica InSync and how it like grows in terms of like the governance, so to say. So as I said, so we have the national committees on the one hand, we have then the international steering board that is still led and like ongoing led by Antje Boetius, and we have in addition the coordination office. And all of that is like really like closely linked, and this is like what we built from the beginning, and the international steering board is really consisting of the leads of the different international institutions that are represented through Antarctica InSync and then also have established their national committees. In addition, we have now these 7 themes I just presented. We therefore then decided, in order to connect these themes even closer and also to connect the leadership also then to the international steering board, as well as to the coordination office, we decided to have the additional establishment of the scientific steering board. This is scientific steering board, as you will see in a minute, is in the end consisting of really the leadership people from these different themes. And then a point that is also meant to be discussed a little bit today is then the point of the working groups. So we have our themes, and there are quite some themes that are really, really broad, which is why it might be helpful to have or establish additional working groups beneath these themes. However, in addition, in order to connect them themes, because we know that there are quite some cross-cutting themes between the different themes that are worth to like also discuss in smaller focused round, which is why we want to clarify here that it's really, really welcome to also here establish working groups crossing these themes in order really to bring people together and to make sure that we really in the end catch all different themes and topics that we are interested with respect to Antarctica InSync, because this is again like really the bottom-up process where the whole science community is highly welcome to join and actively contribute contribute in order to really make Antarctica InSync the success that we all have in mind. Talking about again the science steering board. So as mentioned before, it's in the end consisting of the leads of the different themes. This leadership has established also over the past weeks and months, where we know that in particular the in-person meeting in Frascati was a really huge success also here in order to get people getting committed to InSync and to really take on this leadership role, where we are really glad and thankful for that these people took this up. However, we do know that there's of course quite some more people also taking on roles in leadership within the themes, which might be not listed here, however, are kind of like listed below, that however, like in the end, also ensuring the whole process of continuous communication between the themes, which means in the end that these names given here are now not set in stone, but it's of course always an active and dynamic process. So if other people want to take on leadership roles in the science steering board, just approach to the coordination office, approach your theme leads, and then we are sure that we can find a way also of like changing leadership as it has been done already in some themes even until now. In addition, part of the science steering board is the SCAR, are the co-chairs of the SCAR Action Group, Petra Heil and Inga Beck, which is also just about to kick off. And Diego is luckily also part of our science steering board as part of the coordination office in order to organize all ourselves in a good manner. And having this said, I now hand over to Alex to continue in our timeline.
Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome from my side as well. I briefly want to pick up the timeline where Steffi left it in 24. So in 25, it was really about gathering the community to develop the science plan. So there was another ATCM meeting where the momentum even was picked up. More and more countries had joined the effort. We had the UN Ocean Conference where we had a lot of events also with policy and potential funders. And very importantly, in 25, we started also the process of forming these working groups that Steffi was just talking about. So there was a call initiated, and this call is ongoing. So everyone can always submit proposals for working groups. We also started, very importantly, expedition and project proposals to write them internationally. I know that many of you have already written proposals. Some of them are already successfully funded, which is fantastic. So we are really moving ahead substantially this year. We also had meetings to develop the science plan, and this was really done in these webinar series and the in-person meeting in Frascati in November. One more slide, please. So in this process, what was done in spring 25, we had the first webinar. We had the initial drafts of theme descriptions that came out of these documents that Steffi had showed, the SCAR Horizon Scan, the Southern Ocean Action Plan. There was an initial description of the themes that was altered along the way. But this was our starting point. And then in the first webinar, there was some heroes presenting those themes and the initial ideas. And those are also people that continued throughout the process. So we are very thankful to them to also push this ahead. Then we had a second webinar in September where we discussed this with the wider community. We had an interactive discussions also in breakout groups where people could provide input to the initial theme description, input to also put forward ideas to the Frascati meeting if they couldn't join. We had announced the Frascati meeting already in spring in 25, but nevertheless, we are aware that there is travel constraints always, and that not everyone could join that meeting. But nevertheless, we were very happy with the representation of the community there, even though it was somewhat biased, and we are well aware of that. And we did develop the white papers there and proceeded in the writing substantially. And Then following on from the first CATI meeting, we also invited members from the community that have been already very active in the development of the ideas for Antarctica InSync to continue in the white paper process and in the writing process. And then the first draft was published in December, and now the community has been invited to provide input. There is always the opportunity to add ideas and information to these white papers as we go along. One more slide, please. So regarding the working groups, this was something that we had mentioned that they formed last year, and we to date have 13 working groups that have been already accepted and approved by the International Steering Board. So these proposals already went through and will appear on the website soon, so you can also get the contact information. We also have received a couple more working groups in the meantime, so those are currently in review. So you can see them here as well, those that we just received recently. And on the next slide, you can see those that are already approved, so you can have a look at what is there already. But as I said, we will have these online in a couple of weeks. Also, you can, as I mentioned, always submit working groups still at this point. The next slide, please. So then I hand back to Diego to go through the SEAM white paper presentations.
Okay, thank you, Alex and Steffi. And as Alex mentioned, now we will start with the presentations. And for that, I want to invite Petra Heil, and she will start with the first presentation about the policy paper for Antarctica InSync.
Yeah, so thanks for the introduction, and Diego and Isu for organizing this. This is actually not one of the SEAM white papers, but it's just to provide you with a quick overview of the so-called impacts paper that we also developed, especially in the second half of last year, to underpin the Antarctica InSync efforts, and especially to work with the national setups like the national committees, but also the different funding agencies, for them to have a big understanding of what the Antarctica InSync initiative overall will deliver back at a higher level. So it's very much about outlining the vision, which I guess we are all very much familiar with. We have obviously an executive summary, but the emphasis was really put to explain what Antarctica's InSync differentiates from other initiatives. It's not only the Antarctic, but as you are very well aware, and others probably say later, it's the near synchronous observations year-round, if possible, especially in those wide data gaps that we have. We know winter, the shoulder seasons, and so on, but also to get a better regional coverage that might be in hotspots for long-term observations, but also targeted areas. And InSync, bringing the wider community and the cross-disciplinary aspect together, really supports this. It's also important that from the set out and the tabulated form of the SEAM white papers templates, plus what you have been working on, really speaks for it. It needs to be evidence-based advice for policy and other users. And it's very important for us in the setup and the design of our projects, from the smaller to the larger in the synthesis papers, to be really cognizant, to work on that, to agree on clean use of variables, to follow the standards and the data protocols such as the FAIR. Implications for the practice. We are also touching base with other non-scientific players in the region. This is obviously very much linked to SCAR, WMO, and other initiatives, SUS obviously, but also to commercial operators such as the tourism, IATO, and other organized operators and fisheries, for example. What hasn't been mentioned, I believe, is we are very much working with ComNAP and are very happy for their response to Antarctica InSync and their interest. And so it's a really big initiative leading us to bridge towards the upcoming International Polar Year in 2032-33. For the impact areas, we have we have designed this table. This is just a cutout of it, where we really bring the attention of the different non-scientific community participants to the outcomes from an initiative like InSync for their area of interest. You're probably very well connected to at least one of them for your scientific outcomes. But anyhow, this was just to bring it together and to demonstrate the overall global impact Antarctica InSync aims to have. It's also a call to action. We know that the funding is very much fragmented between nations, within the nations, but also in clusters, such, for example, as the EU cluster. And so it's very, very important for us to come together to deal with different timelines and different funding landscapes and also different operational landscapes. So this Impacts white paper has been really used to try and bring and align as many of these as possible. In the background, we are still working on deriving a graphic similar as the schematic, which comes from the Sky Environmental Portal, and you would probably be familiar with. So we are trying to tune in and provide one that's really much speaking to what's coming out and summarized in the science papers that will be discussed in the following. So thank you.
Thank you really much, Petra, for the presentation. Just to inform to the audience, so now we will continue with the 7 different scientific team presentations, and then with one cross-cutting white paper on Earth observation. Before we start with the next talk, I want to remember to all the speakers that we have a really tight schedule. So please try to stay on time during your presentations. And with that, I am really happy to invite to the floor Sebastian Swart, who will provide an overview about Team 1 and present the different ideas of the white paper.
Great, thanks, Diego. I hope you can see me okay on the screen, hear me and see
Yes.
the screen presentation in the right way. All right, so this is the first theme that many of you may be familiar with, which is dealing with the Southern Ocean physical and biogeochemical cycles, in particular with an emphasis on a changing climate and the impacts that may have on these processes. And we have 5 coordinating authors that have been meeting to develop a lot of this work, really supported by a huge community of lead authors. And now we're very excited to have the broad community input through this process with SCAR. So Elisa Carli, I think she's with us on the call, and we're also supported by JB Saleh, Leah Oliver, and Elisa Drosta. So just very briefly, since this is obviously the high level view, is that the background to this work has been driven by, obviously, I think we can all be convinced here in this call that the Southern Ocean is really a dominant player in our planetary heat and carbon cycling. It couples all the ocean basins through the ACC, and it, of course, exerts control over sea level rise and heat uptake through the air-sea ice interactions. And these have been changing dramatically. We've seen some very recent work and science that is really showing that this environment is changing in the last decade or so in a dramatic way. And this obviously extends from the sea ice declines that we've been seeing in the past few years, all the way to the ecosystems that have been impacted. And obviously these remain very, very poorly constrained on the biogeochemical and ecosystem side. That requires a lot more work and efforts to better predict them. And this is largely has been driven by mass insufficiency of observations, in particular in regions such as the marginal ice zone or seasonal ice zone, due to the sea ice hampering our efforts to take observations there and keep long time series. And then, of course, the seasonal cycle, the shoulder seasons and the winter. So the autumn, winter, spring remain very low in observational coverage, especially for certain disciplines. So the knowledge gaps that this white paper is touching on, I'm not going to go through them all here in detail, but we cover the aspects of air-sea fluxes, the deep water upwelling and transformation and their sites, the bottom water formation, obviously nearer the coastline and in the subpolar seas, the cross-shelf exchange mechanisms, bringing, for example, heat towards the Antarctic ice shelves. Freshwater budgets are currently still very unconstrained, and the carbon and gas, the trace gases, has been also a big element. In Frascati, we really saw this drive for trying to understand better trace gases like nitrous oxide and methane. This has led to 9 high-level recommendations that you will find in the paper. The first one of these is really to maintain what we have. So we really want to emphasize that we should keep our long-term time series. These are crucial to understanding climate variability in the past and how it will develop in the future. And we don't want to see a sort of resources being channeled away from the long-term time series maintenance, which is really mostly driven by ship-based and land-based monitoring, the Argo float program, and also ship-based transects across the ACC and Southern Ocean. Air-sea flux measurements are a massive gap in the Southern Ocean. We really want to emphasize the role of ships and vessels that can carry the sensors that measure air-sea fluxes. But also we are seeing the birth of all these new in situ and autonomous platforms that can really help to fill gaps, and seasonally and both spatially. The marginalized zone is very much a large gap. Like I said, because of the sea ice, etc., has remained data sparse. And so this is an emphasis in the white paper for this particular region, with a particular focus, of course, on the autumn to spring period. Then more specifically, regionality does come through in this broad paper. We would like to see that we get year-round continental shelf observations. This is seen still as a big gap, especially in those seasons where we normally don't go there with ships. We want to obviously coordinate observational arrays that really obviously speak very much to the Antarctic InSync initiative. And the ocean ice interface is very much lacking observations, and we would like to see funding and resources channeled towards these areas, which we see as a critical gap in the climate system. And lastly, there's obviously a massive opportunity to leverage off Earth observational capabilities. We have new products out there, new missions flying, and those require to be supported for new mission proposals, as well as to link in situ observations with the satellite-based observations to better understand the whole system. There is an emphasis on process-based model development, where we obviously see gaps there for parameterizations and improvement in the modeling community for ice-ocean interactions, ocean mixing, and of course the biogeochemical cycling and water mass transformation. And lastly, we should see international resource sharing, and this is really sharing our opportunities and access to the fields, support the data sharing and access, and to coordinate all these different platforms, robotics or otherwise, that are deployed in the Southern Ocean. And of course, these are really supported by many of these different working groups, which I will not go through, but Alex spoke about them briefly. And these are really providing emphasis on certain topics or methodologies that really can contribute to the development of Theme 1 through the Antarctica InSync period. And that's where I'll leave it.
Thank you, Seth, for the nice overview of Theme 1. Our next speaker is Rushika Dadic, and today she will present the overview of Theme 2.
So thank you for this organization of this webinar. So this presentation summarizes Theme 3 of InSync white paper, and which focuses on processes driving rapid change in the Antarctic ice sheet and ice shelf. And You see the names of the three co-chair. I'm Gaël Durand, and held by Hannah Haugen and Henrik Hovald, and a list of bunch of people that contributed to this paper, and it's now open to community comments. So I will briefly outline the scope of the paper, the main knowledge gaps we identified, and the proposed observation strategy with the explicit aim of gathering community feedback to refine the document. So, excuse me, Team 3 focuses on the process driving rapid and heterogeneous change in Antarctic ice sheet and ice shelf. The paper is organized around key interfaces where coupling is critical: ice ocean, ice atmosphere, and ice bed or solid earth, as illustrated here. And the objective is to identify what must be observed and how within Antarctica InSync, and to provide guidance to the community for developing coordinated research projects rather than to produce a prescriptive observing system. We structured the paper around 4 knowledge gaps. Knowledge gap 1 concerns ice dynamics and structural integrity, including flow, fracture, calving, and grounding line change. The second knowledge gap addresses ice-ocean interaction, particularly ocean heat transfer and basal melting. Knowledge gap 3 focuses on atmospheric forcing and surface processes such as snowfall, melt, and firn evolution. And finally, knowledge gap 4 concerns basal conditions, grounding zone, and solid earth processes. Key message is that rapid change emerges from coupled processes across these gaps, not from any single component in isolation. So addressing these knowledge gaps required integrated multi-platform observation across ice, ocean, atmosphere, and bed. And in situ measurements remain for sure essential to constrain key processes, but they must be complemented by airborne and satellite observation to ensure spatial coverage. Finally, observation must be sustained and coordinated to capture variability and to reduce uncertainty in models and projections. So to translate knowledge gap into actionable observing strategy, the paper defined key variables. These variables span ice, ocean, atmosphere, and bed, and target the key interfaces highlighted earlier, of course. And priority is given to variables that directly constrain processes, not only system states, and that can be observed synchronously across domains. So the intent is that these key variables guide supersite design, measurement strategy, and links between observations and models. So supersites are proposed as focused location for coordinated multi-domain observation. Their purpose is to resolve K-coupled processes at interfaces and at relevant timescales rather than provide exhaustive spatial coverage. Supersites are explicitly intended to complement, not replace, Antarctic scale coverage, and to be linked through scientific traverse or other spatially distributed observing strategy. The selection is guided by scientific relevance to the knowledge gaps, as well as practical feasibility and existing infrastructure. Based on the knowledge gap and the observing needs, the paper formulates 3 key recommendations. First, we recommend the implementation of coordinated multi-domain observation centered on supersites to target key ice, ocean, atmosphere, bed interface, and directly resolve coupled processes. Second, this focused process study should be embedded with a broader observing strategy, combining supersite with scientific traverse, airborne campaign, and sustained satellite observation to ensure Antarctic scale coverage. And third, we stress the need to strengthen links between observation and models so that improved process understanding translates into better parameterization, reduced uncertainties, and improved predictions. So together, this recommendation aims to support the objective of Antarctica InSync by aligning process understanding, observing strategy, and prediction. So we are primarily seeking feedbacks on refinement and clarity rather than on the overall structure of the paper. In particular, are the key processes or variables that should be emphasize more strongly? Are the priorities and the examples clear and well balanced across region and disciplines? Are the important ongoing or planned activities that should be better reflected? And community input will directly inform the revised version of the white paper through the discussion we'll have in a few tens of minutes and through the SCORE website. Thanks. I'm stopping sharing now.
Thank you, Gail. Really nice talk. Rushika, are you ready to present or?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Fantastic. I'm just trying to share. Oh, can you see my screen?
Yes, it works, but not in presentation. Now it works. Perfect.
No, it's in presentation mode. Okay. Thank you, and sorry for that. It's currently the World Economic Forum in Davos, and I know it's not the forum's fault, but everything's a bit of a mess, so I am too. Anyway, so we'll present the theme 2, the rapid sea ice decline and its causes and consequences. That's all about sea ice. And I'm just going to go through this. So I think this is a coordination team, and we have different people that are kind of responsible for the different parts. So if you have any questions about that support the physical parts, which is Steffi and me, Laetitia for the BGC part, Martin for the modeling, and Gunnar for remote sensing. So we make sure that we have all the different disciplines covered. This is the background to the white paper, and it's obviously that we have seen these rapid sea ice declines in the past few years. You can see this figure in the white paper, and these different landfalls and pack ice, these are just examples. So we are not just looking at one region, but really the emphasis on the circumpolar observations. We have identified then the guiding research questions, essentially the knowledge gaps and the research needs that we were supposed to do. And first of all, we have the sea ice mass balance and dynamics, and kind of these coupled processes between the mass balance and dynamics over time and all the way around Antarctica. Second, we have the coupled sea ice atmosphere ice sheets interactions. So essentially all the interactions that go on between the sea ice and the other components of the Southern Ocean systems. Then the ecosystem and biogeochemical processes, essentially what are the consequences of this rapid sea ice decline on the ecosystem dynamics and biogeochemical processes. And last but not least is the climate implication and feedbacks on the global system. And you will see that all of these questions go back to this rapid sea ice decline. So the rapid sea ice decline that we observed is in the kind of in the center, and we're just trying to see, the idea is try to see what consequences these rapid sea ice decline has. We have identified these 7 processes. There was a big community input, so we hope that nothing's missed, but if there's anything missed, please, we can have a discussion about this. And so these 7 processes are supposed to cover the research questions that we have. And here in the white paper, this is essentially the structure all in one figure. So we first have these 4 questions that we just discussed, and in each question is covered by 2 processes where we have gaps. So in the sea ice mass balance and dynamics is the sea ice growth and melt, sea ice drift and deformation. In the coupled processes, we have snow, atmosphere, ice energy budget, the coupling with the ocean boundary layer. In the ecosystem and biogeochemical processes, we have the ecosystem and the biogeochemical related processes, obviously. And then the last one is where there's a gap where we look at the link to the large scale climate variability. And so you will see there's a lot of variables on this. And what we did, and maybe that's a discussion that we might want to have, we looked at what are the essential variables that should be measured, and that's all of them. And then we emphasize in bold the ones that are the GCOS essential variables. This means in these 3, in the research question 3, I think that's not very well defined through GCOS. And so I think there might be a bigger discussion. What are I mean, they're all essential variables. The question is just which ones are defined that everyone can measure them relatively easy. And then, so maybe this is also the discussion that we should have later in the breakout session. And then last but not least, thinking of these key strategies. So the importance is really on the circumpolar observations everywhere and not just in the places where we already have a lot of or most observations through regular and repeated visits. So there's at least a whole year of operations that will then also lead the community into IPY, using strong international cooperations, but also satellite observations, as you can see here, that we can expand this to much larger scale. And in all the key regions, so in the pack ice, in the marginal ice zone, in the landfast ice, and in the polynyas. And it would be really nice to discuss some of these points, especially whether we've missed something. How do people think about these essential variables, and what else do we need to add into this white paper? Thank you.
Thank you, Ruchika, for the talk. And now continue with the agenda. I'm happy to invite to present the theme 4, Friederike Weid.
Do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So I will, on behalf of the co-writing team of theme 4, presenting you the white paper and the structure and what we put into that. And we would like to welcome for contribution from the entire community on the white paper. The people listed here, these are the core writing people which attended to the Frascati meeting, and we have frequently meetings on writing, developing the white paper. And so the key challenge we face in theme 4, which we focused on, is the challenge in how biodiversity is spatially and temporally structured across the different levels. For example, the genetic, taxonomic, functional level from the sub-Antarctic to the high Antarctic, from ice sheets, from land into deep sea, and from microbes to top predators. And with the theme 4, it's focused on improving our understanding on the Antarctic life throughout the different scales and levels. And the biodiversity is often underestimated, and the observations are limited in both in space and time. And with the InSync initiative, we aim to have more data and understanding of these gaps. And this theme brings together the biological, physical, and chemical, as well as the dynamic observations to understand how these ecosystems function and the services are provided there. And by integrating these different environments. And this white paper is intended to remain broad and general, so it also integrates all biological research fields rather than focusing on one narrow specific detail. And for that, we focused on identifying the knowledge gaps in essential variables and observing strategy. And we structured the white paper around these 3 core pillars you see here, the biodiversity, the functioning, and the services. And with that, we also distinguish between terrestrial and marine environments. And these ecosystems, or this biodiversity function and services, they provide evidence-based research or are linked to conservation of a process, via versa. And also the habitat description are relevant across all all the themes and all these key core points, and they connected to all the different sections we have. And we also wrote down or highlighted that theme 4 is highly interconnected and overlaps with other InSync themes. And we highlighted this connection within the white paper. You can see some examples here. And we see a key challenge to stay connected with other themes. But I think the working groups are really important at that point because they set a link between different themes, but also within our theme, it sets different links to each other. And with that, I'm also coming to the last slide already. As I said in the beginning, we would like to ask the community to think broadly when commenting on this white paper, then focusing rather on a specific species, for example, or on a specific references. And this will help us to keep the document open and relevant and inclusive for everyone in our community. And we would like to, the comments until end of January, and we have the goal to have the white paper finalized in mid-February, end of February. So that's from theme 4.
Thank you, Fritzi. Before we continue with the next speakers, I want to repeat that we are really tight on schedule, and in the second part of the webinar, we have plenty time for discussions. So with that, I want to present Machiel Lemaire, and he will present the general aspects of theme 5.
Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me and see the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so I'm very happy to present theme 5 on the anthropogenic signatures in the Antarctic. To you, this is based on the work of a large group of authors that have gathered in Frascati, but also have worked on this in the last months. What is important to mention at first is that this team focuses on the human impact on the Antarctic, and this is due to both increasing human activities in the Antarctic itself, but also due to increasing pressures also outside of the Antarctic region that are reaching and traveling into the Antarctic. So we want to examine the impacts of human activities in the Antarctic, including also science activities, tourism activities, fisheries, shipping, and their interactions with climate change. Like with the aim of informing environmental policy in the Antarctic Treaty System. So the overall aim as such is to seek to quantify. My presentation doesn't want to. Maybe now, yeah. So with the aim to quantify and monitor these anthropogenic pressures through standardized and internationally coordinated protocols across chemical, biological, ecological, social, and cultural dimensions during Antarctica InSync. So we cover a lot with regard to these anthropogenic signatures, and it is also kind of represented in the way that this is structured by its focus on different of these impact areas, so to say. So we focus on chemical pollution. In topic A, we focus on underwater noise pollution, on the impacts of tourism visitation to sites, on biosecurity and invasive species, on the effects of marine pollution and interactions with phytoplankton and climate, with regard to the fisheries and the krill fisheries. There's a special topic, and also a more humanities focused let's say team on encounters or on narratives of the Antarctic and how they are impacting the way that activities are being organized. So we can very briefly go over each of these topics. A very important one is, of course, chemical and plastic pollution. With each one of these topics, what you will see, so I will not go over them in detail, is that what they all kind of share is that there's a limited, let's say, a systematic monitoring of these impacts. So that is work that has to be done within these different team fields. But there's also, of course, a benefit of connecting these different teams fields through different working groups, perhaps. Each one of these team fields, like this one on plastic, will have a different, let's say, indicators that are associated with them. The same for underwater noise pollution. There's really a limited baseline of this across the Antarctic. It could really benefit from having standardized protocols for this and establishing a much more, let's say, complete picture of what underwater noise entails. The same with regard to tourism, visitation impacts. Unless overall tourism has been growing rapidly, which could be important reason to be looking at this specifically already. There's a great concern over impacts, but also the increasing use of new sites in the Antarctic. There's a drive towards that, and the importance of having a standardized monitoring protocol is really important in this context. Biosecurity and invasive species, of course, has come up as an important area as well. That could also benefit a lot from improved, let's say, coordination and improved standardization, which is what this topic D would like to emphasize. And then, as I mentioned already, we're also happy to have a specific, let's say, focus on fisheries also in the Antarctic Ocean, on the Southern Ocean, and krill fisheries with regard to a range of different topics, but also quantification or behavioral interactions between fishing vessels and predators, and also the establishment of coordinated, standardized, let's say protocols and approaches. On the team E, we are looking at the interactions between pollution, marine pollution, phytoplankton, and climate feedback. It's also a specific kind of interaction that requires more attention. And finally, under topic F, we're looking at a more humanities approach, as I mentioned already, like an understanding of the kind of pictures, of images and stories that are going around about Antarctic expeditions and the way that they are that's informing also public engagement, but also perhaps let's say coordinated efforts like Antarctica InSync or the IPY in the future. Let's say overall, and the last thing I would like to say is that each one of these teams require work in itself, but also benefit from having coordinated efforts for bringing these different, let's say, pressures, these anthropogenic pressures together to get a more complete picture, of course, and that this team is also very much a interdisciplinary team, and then I mean we're really working from biophysical sciences, environmental sciences, social sciences, and humanities in this team. So this is also an extra. This requires extra attention in the interdisciplinary cooperation. Thanks a lot. I'll stop sharing there.
Thank you, Michiel, for the presentation. Our next speaker is Martin Rodens, and today he will present a general overview of the theme 6.
So I hope you can see my slides on full screen.
Yes.
I'm here to present on behalf of the Team 6 leadership. So Jesse Creeman and Marcus Frey took over in the beginning of the year. Yesterday, Julia Smarlett presented our white paper. Today, I will take over and also moderate the session. About the title, we have realized that we have to include precipitation. So it's now aerosol cloud precipitation, interactions, and radiative feedbacks. And the motivation is that there is still a significant variability and uncertainty in climate predictions that originates from issues with the cloud processes in the Southern Ocean. And that goes from the whole aerosol topic, so aerosol emission, aerosol transport, processing in clouds, to the precipitation and the associated radiative feedbacks. So clouds have a strong impact on the surface energy balance and on the surface mass balance, and we will try to foster our understanding on those two issues. In our white paper, we have defined 5 knowledge gaps. You can read through those in the white paper. I will just briefly go over them. So we will start with the aerosol sources, the aerosol properties, and the aerosol processes, so the processing on a chemical level, but also the transport. And then we will go to knowledge gap 2, which is everything that has to do with clouds and precipitation. So how these aerosols that we hopefully have understood in knowledge gap 1 are impacting the cloud. So we are talking about cloud phase here, about cloud microphysics, and also the formation of precipitation, and ultimately the precipitation that reaches the surface, either the ocean, the sea ice, or the ice sheet itself. Connected with that is knowledge gap 3, so the understanding of the surface energy budget and the boundary layer structure. So due to various processes, especially strong winds and cold temperatures, the boundary layer is very, very special in the Southern Ocean and Antarctica, and there's still a lack of observations and understanding also on the modeling side. And then knowledge gap 4, that goes in a bit of a broader spatial scale. So we want to understand how clouds feedback on the circulation. So you can release latent heat if you form clouds. They impact then again cyclones and mesoscalic features. So we have a coupling process also on the larger scales, and this is where we want to go with knowledge gap 3. This is also where the topic of atmospheric rivers, warm and moist air intrusions comes into play. And then we have a knowledge gap 5, where we want to bring in the modeling. So there's still a lack of understanding on the process level, but also the implementation and the models is still lacking, especially because high-resolution simulations are not yet routinely done in that region, and also most of the state-of-the-art climate models still have a strong bias there. This is a conceptual overview of our approach. That figure is also there in the white paper. So the endpoints are highlighted in orange. So we want to focus on the sea ice retreat, the surface mass balance, and the surface energy balance. And the modes of research or the platforms are visible in purple. So we want to use all the platforms that are available: research stations, research vessel, buoys, aircrafts, and also satellites, and to understand this interlinked processes. With respect to observing strategies and essential variables, we want to emphasize that we need synchronized year-round observations following standard protocols so that we can ingest and compare the data done or collected at different locations. And we decided to have a multi-level approach. So we have sorted our variables into 3 priorities, going from priority 1 to 3. So priority 1 is the baseline, where we wanted to have year-round observations across as many platforms and locations as possible. Those variables were selected to be observable with not too much effort regarding logistics and manpower. If you go higher in priority, or like to the priority 2 and 3, those require more effort, more manpower, more logistics, but also provide more insights. So priority 2 variables, we are looking into more details, particularly in the vertical dimension that encompasses remote sensing, but also balloon mount observations, research aircrafts, and drones. There we envision fewer sites and potentially only during intensive observation periods. And then priority 3 are the high impact observations at dedicated super sites. We are aware that this will only boil down to a few expeditions, voyages, and research flights, but this is really to understand the system in very much detail. And then we also sideline everything with the modeling activities to validate the models, intercompare different models, and have high resolution simulations for case studies and to interpret our observations. So I want to come to the summary. So we want to have an integrated ensemble of in situ and remote sensing observations. targeted specifically in improving the numerical representation and constraining model uncertainties in climate models. We emphasize the need for vertical observations, especially of low-level clouds and across different latitudes. So we want to understand the transition from the open ocean to the sea ice to coastal Antarctica to the inland. So we need spatially distributed observations, and we want to cover the East Antarctica, West Antarctica, as well as the peninsula, and also the Southern Ocean around Antarctica. And final point, all the observations I talked about are virtually non-existent. We have a very few data about aerosol cloud interaction and the impact on precipitation from the Southern Ocean and Antarctica, and we really want to make a step forward in a synchronous collection of observations, and this is what we are describing in the white paper. And finally, I want to invite feedback from the community. So please go through the SCAR website and provide your feedback with all on the white paper, and then we can discuss that we cover every needs from the community as well. Therefore, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Martin, for your talk. Now, our next speaker is Matthew Casado, and he will present the general overview of Team 7.
Hi, everyone. So thank you so much for giving us some time to present Theme 7, which is on viability extremes and tipping in a changing Antarctic climate. It's been a very large work effort from some of the people who are written here, and also like a much longer list of contributing authors, because we had more than 40 people helping us to write this paper. And both, like all of us, like Irina, Louise, Martin, and myself are here today to try to animate the session. And the idea was that we wanted to try to put all the observations that will be collected in Antarctica InSync into a longer-term climate perspective. And so this meant that we can focus on climate variability, on extreme events, and also on rapid climatic changes such as tipping points. And so the goal would be to link the change at timescale ranging from the event, like storms, atmospheric river, heat waves, to multi-decadal and even longer-term observation. And this would be done probably using a very large array of tools, like from, of course, observation from weather station and direct observation in the field, but also combined with ice core and sediment core to get like a long-term historical record. And the goal will be really to consolidate Antarctica InSync community efforts around past Antarctic and future viability and observations. So because we're talking about climate variability and we are across a lot of disciplines, we noticed straight away that Theme 7 had a lot of overlap with other themes, but we prefer to think of those as synergy and as points where we can work together to try to get more from those points. And like this are the Theme 7 principal foci that we identify. So first, snow, fern, and surface mass balance. And here we would hope to be able to get coordinated efforts and measurements to reduce the uncertainty on sea level projections, and mostly what comes from the accumulations, the snowfall, the melt, refreezing, and runoff. And then for atmosphere and water cycle, we would like to expand weather, precipitation, and water isotopes observations to be able to better track storms and moisture transport inland. And this will be essential for forecasting extreme and future rainfall shifts. About ocean, sea ice, and atmosphere coupling, we believe that there are research gaps in that needs to be investigated for like marginal ice zone observations to try to understand how sea ice loss and ocean warming will amplify extremes, alter the heat moisture exchange, and threaten deep water formation. And finally, for variability and warning detection, we want to combine new observation with ice cores and marine records to be able to distinguish human-driven trends from natural variability and identify early warning signals of irreversible change. This is a figure that we used to illustrate the white paper, because even though it's not exhaustive because we had such a wide topic, we feel like it's still representing quite a lot of the processes that Antarctica will face in terms of extreme event, in terms of tipping, and it's a simpler way to represent variability. We are, of course, very happy for any feedback that people would have about the white paper, about this figure. We identify quite a lot of knowledge gaps, and for the interest of time, I'm not going to go over all of them. We are aware that there is overlap with other themes, and we are happy to work with all the other themes to try to identify how we can actually split in the middle. And this discussion has started a little bit with some of the themes, and there are more to do. But we feel like all these knowledge gaps will be key to really improve the results of Antarctica InSync. This is the key variable tables that we included. It's quite complicated, and I will discuss it a little bit more in the breakout session, but we are also very keen on getting feedback on it through the SCAR feedback process. And just to have enough time, a couple of words. It's still time to join Theme 7. It started really late. It was only in November. So contact us, like myself, Louis Syme, Irina Gorodetskaya, and Martin Werner, if you need anything. And there are 11 planned InSync working groups so far to be affiliated to Theme 7. I wrote a couple of those here that were accepted. If you need help to suggest new working groups that would match Theme 7 or be across Theme 7 and another team, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you really much, Matthew, for the talk. And now our last speaker is Martin Werring, who will present the general aspect of the cross-cutting white paper on Earth observations.
Thanks, Diego. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so as Diego says, I'm presenting on the Earth observation cross-cutting group. And we have a long list of contributing authors. So thank you to all of them for their contribution so far. We are fairly European-centric, although not solely European-centric, and concentrated to some degree on the first three themes. So we're very much open to contributions from outside of Europe and also all themes. So please do engage with this activity. So the structure of our white paper is slightly different from the others because of the sort of cross-cutting nature. And we've kind of largely split the paper into two sections. The first highlights kind of what EO can bring to Antarctica InSync. And I think the message has been coming across in lots of the science theme overviews as well, that really Earth observation is a good resource, is a great, fantastic resource for the continuous and comprehensive monitoring of the ice sheet and the ocean and all the associated processes. And it provides that essential information to tackle lots of the science priorities. We have a wealth of satellite data to fall back on as well from the past decades, and obviously more satellite data to come. So that's kind of the what EO brings, and I think it's kind of obvious to a large extent, but it's a good thing to remind people of. And we have a table of data sets in our white paper that highlights the variety and complexity of the data sets available. The second part of the white paper focuses on what the EO community think are the priorities for Antarctica InSync. Our first priority is to improve the satellite observations of Antarctica and the Southern Ocean, and this takes the form of course, extending the observational record, increasing the range of variables we measure, improving the spatial and temporal resolution, reducing and quantifying uncertainties, obviously increasing the data accessibility, and looking to build new EO satellite capabilities as new sensors fly in the coming years. And lots of these improvements in satellite data sets can be achieved through this coordination with on the ground and in the ocean field work. So together, EO and InSitu form the kind of core observational baseline for InSync, and they can work hand in hand with EO providing information for the fieldwork teams to target key locations of change, and particularly this coordination of supersites. A few of the themes have mentioned the idea of supersites, and that's something that's supported by the EO group. And the CalVal, the observations collected, are particularly important for the new satellite missions. So, for instance, just the ones listed here are from the European missions that will fly in the coming years. There's a need to coordinate clearly with the fieldwork teams to maximize opportunities for calibration and validation. And we have a kind of list of what we'd like from these observations. The fact that they need to be maintained for long periods across multiple seasons is really useful. We tend to have a bias towards the summer seasons. The data should be coincident with satellite overpasses to allow that direct comparison, but also sample the small scale variability within the satellite footprint. There are many campaigns planned for Antarctica InSync, and there's potentially opportunities there to piggyback on those campaigns with low-cost equipment that can be used for satellite validation to ensure we have this large spatial scale. And we've compiled a list of a wish list of our observations that we'd like to see on the ground. A third priority is sort of further coordination with the space agencies and commercial providers. The community realizes there's significant potential for the use of high resolution commercial data products. So we need to have a system there where we can request those data, particularly for high interest events that maybe are kind of over a small period of time, but have a big impact. Modeling teams across all the themes we'd like to work more closely with to ensure that the EO data is maximized. So for model initialization, assimilation, and validation, but also for improved process representation. And the wealth of EO datasets, which are listed in one of the annexes, provide sufficient information to drive research projects. And we have a kind of comprehensive list of some of the research projects that the community would like to lead, and these are linked to many of the working groups that have been established. And one of the advantages we see from the EO perspective is that we can start early, we can start now, basically with the satellite observations that we currently have. We can link this into the current or the observing period of Antarctica InSync, and then deploy on a pan-Antarctic scale and extend out to IPY. So this really gives the big scale opportunities to give that legacy to Antarctica InSync. A further point is that the management of data is important. I think this is important across all the themes and all the activities, and we very much support that from the EO side, particularly ensuring the data is accessible, interoperable, and analysis ready. So that's all for me, very quick overview of the EO group. We're very happy to welcome feedback and refinement from everyone else from the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you really much, Martin, for your talk. And now I want to invite the participants to the second part of the webinar. I invite all of you to join the different breakout group sessions for discussion. We're going to have 30 minutes there. And just as information, in the upper right corner, a panel will open showing the different breakout groups, and the participants can choose in which one to join. As well, I want to mention that the participants can jump from one session to another one if they want to provide comments in more than one specific white paper. Continue with the agenda now. We're gonna, I invite Alex to present the next steps of Antarctica InSync and the planning for this year. 1 second, Alex.
Thanks. Yeah, it would be great if you could share.
It works?
Yes, thank you very much, Diego, and thanks everyone for joining the breakout sessions. I hope it went okay. We had some technical issues in the one I was, but I hope for all of you it went somewhat well, and everyone could place their questions that they had and comments maybe. But please follow up in the coming week or so, because the community feedback for the white papers that is still open until January, the end of January 2026. So until the end of this month. So that's not too much time left. So please, just a quick reminder that everyone does put in their comments. So following up from this, Diego, can you stay on that page? Yeah, thanks. We will have the white paper, also the lead authors will revise the white papers according to the comments. Then we will have them published on the SCAR website with individual DOIs, probably around March. And then also, of course, you can always continue submitting white papers. So we also, there was a question in the breakout we had as well, invite you to the working groups to submit white papers if there is a need for those, if you feel that there is a need within your working group to have a more detailed paper. The theme white papers are really meant to be overarching, broader for also policy for funding agencies, to understand what the different themes are about and what the main urgent questions and key recommendations are. Also, we will, following up from this, now have regular meetings with the scientific steering board that we now established. Of course, this is also meant to increase the communication across the different themes, and that themes become more active in moving forward. But of course, we always encourage you to also organize meetings, discussions within the themes or within the working groups. So this really needs to happen also from the bottom up. So we also invite everyone to reach out to the respective working group leads or theme leads and organize meetings. Now the next page, Diego, please. So a little bit moving on towards later this year, one important aspect of this year is to really move forward with the infrastructure coordination and the implementation. There was also a question on data policy, on data alignment also across different countries. So this is something that we need to do this year. So we will have another webinar probably in before summer in the Northern Hemisphere, winter in the Southern Hemisphere, so July probably. So, and then there's the SCAR Open Science Conference, where we also have several events around Antarctica InSync, where you can join and then join the discussions there at the SCAR Open Science Conference. We will also have a second in-person workshop later in the year, probably in fall. This still has to be determined to, what I said, really work on the implementation, work on the standard operating procedures, and write an implementation plan for InSync. So one other reminder is to please share any infrastructure plans that you have. This can be expedition plans, it can be plans for airborne campaigns, traverses, or field work on stations. Please share them early, because that will help everyone to better understand who is planning for what and where we can maybe link up certain initiatives and share them through the Antarctica InSync Coordination Office. And there is also the opportunity to share those through Polar Decks, and we can also help you to put your plans in there and update them regularly. So with this, I really want to thank you and the community for your contributions today, but also throughout the last couple of months with this white paper process, all this lead authors that have put in a lot of work over the last couple of months to push forward these white papers. And I think this was really a fantastic effort, and I'm very happy that we have so many excellent contributions that make up the science plan for Antarctica InSync. So with this, I would like to thank you and pass back to Diego.
Oh, thank you, Alex. Well, with nothing else to add, I just want to say thank you to all the speakers, to all the participants, and to ISA and SCAR as big partner from us to organizing this webinar. I hope for the community now they feel more like participative and they know how to get more involved, because we know that was a big worry in general for the scientific community about that. And with nothing else to say, I want to say a goodbye and thank you. Have a nice day and see you soon in our next webinar. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter and our LinkedIn account. Bye bye, guys.
Thank you, Diego,
Thank you,
Alex,
bye.
Tiffy, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.